What is up, everyone? Happy Friday. It's the TDR Traded Black podcast. I'm your host, Shad Dales. I'm live, actually on location. I'm actually in a cool little radio studio, but great to have you on as we wrap up things here this week. A lot of stuff to unpack. And the reasons why you should listen to this podcast today, we're going to highlight stocks that we're going to be watching heading into the 2024 year, outlining a couple stocks in psychedelics, a number of stocks in cannabis, and along with the crypto industry. So what are those? Let's find out. Let's welcome in TDR millennial entrepreneur Anthony Varrell and TDR lead financial writer Benjamin A. Smith. First off, before we get into today's podcast, gentlemen, nice job on Wednesday. Nice job.
Thank you.
What'd you think? Did you like it?
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I thought the content was good and the conversation was good.
A shout out to
Anthony did a great job hosting.
Well, I thought you guys did a great job. A shout out to 94.9 The Rock in Port Elgin, Ontario. That is giving me the studios here today to do this podcast. I feel like I'm doing mornings again in the radio industry. But listen, had an incredible trip up to Toronto yesterday at the TSX with the Curleaf team. Very impressed to see them list on the TSX. Overall, it was incredible for the industry. I thought they were great. Some of the things that they outlined to say this is a monumental day for the company, but more important for the overall industry. But it was nice to see. And we're going to get into today's topics, but obviously a big day for the company, right, guys?
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, a lot of people. It's in the cannabis space. You get a lot of negative sentiment a lot of the time. Where people are like, oh, this is a nothing burger, like TSX. Look what it did for TerraSend. Like, this is a senior exchange. It solves custody issues. It's a step forward. Like, would you rather them just sit on the CSE and flounder? And be subject to what's going on? Like, these are incremental steps forward. These are the building blocks that we need to build the foundation to push this industry forward. Yeah, it was a big day. Boris was everywhere. We got to interview him. We also got to go, or you also got to go and do the live segment with him. And I mean, I think it's the 2024 is looking good for Curleaf and the industry at large.
The year
we talked about that too, Chad, on the last podcast. That don't expect too much, like in terms of share price movement and all that. This is a long-term play to unlock catalysts down the road. Institutional investment takes time, so people were to judge this move and expect like a big massive move in share price. It just was not going to happen. Didn't happen with TerraSend. Not going to happen with Curleaf. However, this is going to pay dividends down the road.
I mean, I said it yesterday, and I'll say it again because I mean, this actually resonated with a lot of people. The cannabis industry, we're in our own little special hell until we get S3 or safer. Nothing is going to make the stock prices move aggressively to the upside. Yeah. Like, it is what it is. The companies fundamentally are becoming better by the day. Just look at Maryland, which they reported. I think it was 89 million in sales for the month of November. Ohio's coming online. Like, these catalysts are happening in real time, and the industry from a fundamental perspective has never been stronger.
Biggest thing I found out, and we actually touched on this in the podcast the other day, and I was speaking to Boris, is that there are a lot of black market dispensaries that are going to flip to the legal side in Manhattan. The last thing they want to do is get involved in the retail play. But if that were to happen, you look at as many as 1,500 to 2,000 dispensaries in Manhattan alone. What kind of wholesale opportunity that's going to present for companies like Curleaf, the cannabis, but you get a real idea as to why there's actually a turn for the better in the New York market, because as much as we like these growth states, New York is a behemoth if it gets it done and get done the right way, needless to say. Yeah, sorry, I actually said that too many times last podcast. Somebody pointed out, so that's the last time I say it in the podcast.
It's I mean, it makes complete sense. I mean, if you look at the New York market, like, why not be a master wholesaler of the entire market? Yeah. Look at the luxury market, like Louis Vuitton, Rolex, Hermes. Those stores are galleries for you to go and look at the product. And usually you go buy it at Neiman's or Saks or somewhere else. I mean, I think with the foundation that the cannabis and Curleaf, Cresco's also in there too. That they have with their infrastructure that's already built out to service the market from a wholesale perspective, that strategy probably will ultimately win in that market.
Yeah. Really reals. Yes, I agree. New York has always been a North Star for the States. Needless to say, there it goes. Number 2. Bad habit. I keep saying that.
Needless to say.
Got to get rid of that term. All right, gents, lots to unpack here at the end of the week as we begin first with a post from this morning from Carl Quintanilla from CNBC, who paints the picture over the next 5 years when it comes to the growth of the cannabis industry, when comparing it to the alcohol industry. There's some interesting stuff that he pointed out here, Anthony, but when comparing the two, industries, what stood out to you pertaining to this report?
First of all, what stood out to me most was that Carl Quintanilla was actually covering it. He's Jim Cramer's counterpart in the mornings on CNBC. I mean, this is mainstream coverage. The note was from TD Cowen about how the alcohol industry is losing market share and customers to the cannabis industry, mostly in the millennial and Gen Z category. And I mean, this makes sense. My friends, they're drinking less alcohol. They're having edibles. They're wanting a different experience. Alcohol, it's not in its way out. It's going to be here forever. It's not going anywhere as one of the social vices go. But people are limiting their alcohol consumption and increasing their cannabis consumption, especially in legal markets. And I mean, this from TD Cowen, it was great to wake up this morning and see these names talking about cannabis and talking about how it can be high digit single growth for these operators for the next 5 years. And it could be low double digit growth in adult use markets that are coming online for the beneficiaries in those markets.
Did he highlight as to where each industry could be? Not, looking over year, but maybe what it looks like, both categories in 5 years?
Said that from a quantitative standpoint, I mean, it was very top line. It was that the cannabis industry will add 18 million new consumers in the next 5 years, and the alcohol industry will lose around 2 million net consumers in the next 5 years as the cannabis industry grows.
Do you guys agree with that? As many as 2 million consumers lost in the alcohol industry, Ben, over 5 years? You think that's not bigger?
Yeah, I think that's possible because our society is aging, and aging society generally drinks less alcohol, and the younger generation is more towards cannabis. So I could see the data already shows this. If you look at some of the long-term data, alcohol sales are flat, and this is in an environment with rising inflation. So theoretically, they should be rising at the rate of inflation every year if they're holding steady. So I definitely see this trend continuing.
I actually think 2 million is a small number when you look at
younger. Not really. So I just thought about this in my head. Whenever I go to someone's house, whether it's for a football game, a get together, I'm showing up with a bottle of tequila in my hand. Yeah, every single time. I'm not bringing an ounce of cannabis. I consume less alcohol in a social setting. I'm probably not purchasing net less alcohol. So they're not losing me as a consumer. I'll drink forever. I'm not going to stop drinking alcohol. It's just part of the social fabric of what we do in this country. So I do think that 2 million in losing customers is probably accurate. If not, it might be a little bit overstated. Yeah. Because while I am a huge cannabis advocate, while I am a huge cannabis consumer, I'm just going to flat out say it. I'm never going to stop purchasing alcohol for certain events, whether it's the holidays, social gatherings, even going out. I still grab a drink with dinner. I'm not ever going to show up with cannabis. And I have cannabis on me. I mean, anything that I go to, I've usually got a vape pen in my pocket or joints or something. Yeah. But as a token of like appreciation for showing up to someone's house, I'm never probably going to show up with an ounce of weed versus a bottle of tequila.
Hey, let me just add quickly that sometimes some people in the space, it almost seems like a war between cannabis and alcohol. It's like the cannabis proponents always degrade alcohol as being harmful and not good, and that's fine. It can be in good quantities, but I mean, there's a market for both. I enjoy both. Yeah, and I think one is never going to go away. I just think the cannabis is going to experience higher growth just in the way the demographics are reflecting in society. But alcohol in moderation, just like cannabis in moderation, you shouldn't be toking 5 times a day, preferably. In moderation, everything's all good. Both substances.
Really Real is coming out firing today. I'm the guy showing up with joints. I will only consume booze with people, never alone. Same cannot be said for cannabis, which some valid points there.
That is a very valid point. I mean, I've got a pretty robust liquor cabinet in my house. I have never, ever pour, and it's not because I don't want to. I just never have done it. I've never ever at the end of the day been like, oh, I want a glass of whiskey, or oh, I want a cocktail. You damn well bet I'll smoke a joint or go hit the bong like after work. But I've never. I drink in social settings. I never drink to drink in the luxury of my own home or by myself.
Add in the fact,
and I won't do it with dinner. I rarely will ever do it with dinner at home. It's only like a going out thing.
John Verville, happy Friday. Good to see you, sir. And let us know, as well, as Anthony said, we're actually want to bring on one of our viewers with our podcast next week prior to Christmas. So DM us on Twitter. Give us your examples as to why you should jump on. We're looking forward to that. We appreciate everybody that logs on every single day. This is the TDR Traded Black podcast here on the Benzinga Television Network. This is segment 1, Into the Wire, highlighting the biggest announcements in cannabis, psychedelics, crypto, and AI. Let's switch now to headline number 2. Overseas to the Netherlands, where they've begun trials to make cannabis fully legal. This is interesting, Ben, because these trials that they're beginning, there's some misconceptions here. I thought, maybe I'm wrong, but I thought cannabis was already fully legal. I'm not reading that right.
No.
You know what? I don't blame you, because I actually thought that as well. And I think a lot of this goes to the fact that places like Amsterdam have a red light district. So it's sort of known as a reputation of anything goes, right? Kind of thing. But actually, cannabis is not legal to possess in the Netherlands currently. It's actually not. So this trial, it's going to be conducted in 2 cities, and it's going to allow users to consume cannabis legally in the cannabis shops over there. And, this is important. Independent researchers will monitor the trial and view with a view of eventual decriminalization if there is no issues, safety or criminality or whatnot. So this is leading Netherlands on the path to legalization, much like we see in Germany, in my view.
John Verville's coming at you today, Anthony.
Yeah, I mean, I thought this was pretty interesting. It's been a law since 1970 in European fashion that they have tolerance towards cannabis from an enforcement perspective. But I mean, really, why they're doing this is to curb the black market. Gangs have gotten very involved in the cannabis trade in the Netherlands. It's a small country, obviously, by nature. This is an experiment to see if by allowing legal cannabis within the country, it will curb the illegal activity. I think that this is it's a great cause. It's a great reason to try bringing cannabis legal, and it's just another step forward for the EU as far as cannabis policy goes. So I mean, this is great to see.
Plus revenue, right? And I think anybody that looks at opportunities as far as a new industry that has so much attention, that's got to be at the forefront. But interesting, I learned something new. Tolerance is the term used in the Netherlands, and it's not completely fully legalized.
Very illegal, actually. Just they're tolerant of it in certain places.
They just chose not to enforce, the laws
but
in terms of possession since the 1970s. It's been a long time.
But I mean, it was the same
gray area, and same thing with psychedelic truffles as well.
But I mean, look at Canada. Canada had that same policy for a very long time. First trip tolerance to cannabis. I mean, cannabis was illegal. My first trip to Vancouver, which was probably 2015. My buddy and I get off the plane. We immediately say, all right, take us to a dispensary.
Yeah.
We show up to a dispensary. It literally says weeds outside the building. Smells of cannabis. There are bongs, e-nails, joints, all sitting outside on the countertop. Doors are open. And I'll never forget this. We walk. My mind was blown. I walk out of the cab, hit the sidewalk, and I look to my right. And there's 5 police officers just strolling down the street. And
doing
I'm
what?
And I'm like, just patrolling. They were just walking. Maybe they came from lunch or something.
And
I look at them. I look at the dispensary, and I'm like, oh shit! Like, what's going on? Nothing. They looked. They smiled. They laughed. They ignored it, and then they were just on their way. I mean, that is the definition of tolerance. And cannabis was illegal in Canada in 2015.
BC is an interesting place, isn't it, Ben? It's a lot different from a lot of places in Canada.
It was same in Toronto. I mean,
Yeah,
there
it's
were a
just a
ton of
general lack of
there were a ton of
enforcement in a lot
dispensaries.
of areas.
Yeah.
So we saw that gradually going up to legalization. Then obviously after that, that wasn't a necessity for it. But I mean, this is the trend. A lot of these countries aren't even really enforcing the laws on the books. But it's good to see
Yeah.
the Netherlands take the extra step to actually head towards decriminalization if
Yeah.
this trial goes well. I mean, this is
Yeah.
really the road that legalization with another EU country down that road to join Germany.
Yeah. December 15th, 10 more days until Christmas, gents, or to Friday, the TDR Traded Black podcast here on the Benzinga Television Network. Let me know what you guys want for Christmas, too. And as far as our viewers, if you want a chance to win a hoodie, we have a contest going on over at our Instagram handle at Dale's Report. Make sure to log on there. All the contest details are involved. So if you need a TDR hoodie, we're giving away some hoodies prior to Christmas. You guys think those things are sharp? I thought it looked pretty sharp on the other day, Anthony, but
Yeah, it's nice. I like
it's in
that
the
a
lot.
lot. It's a good look. The white and green really pops.
You're in the lot. It's getting some wash today.
Yeah, it's in the I can't be wearing the same thing every day on the podcast. It'll pop its head out next week.
There you go. Into the wire, highlighting all the biggest headlines in cannabis, psychedelics, crypto, and AI. Headline number 3, bring it back to the States. In the state of Pennsylvania, which is looking to expand the cannabis market. There was a bill passed this week. Anthony, can you explain a little bit further as to what this bill was and what was involved in it?
Yeah, so this is going to change the way that the actual operators in the state can have retail locations.
Okay.
Up until this, there were only five cultivators that were allowed to have retail. This is going to expand the retail market and allow for incremental retail for people that are processing as well as cultivation permits going into 2024. And I mean, while this might be, I don't want to say dilutive, but take away a little bit of market share from some of the MSOs that we have there. What I did find that was super odd is with this legislation is going to come a moratorium on the transfer of licenses. So they're basically saying you can't sell your business or you can't merge with somebody else for a certain period of time. And this is to stifle competition, to stop the larger operators in the state from gobbling up other retail players in the state. I mean, I don't like it. It's completely anti-competitive.
Why do you think that was outlined?
I have no idea. I'm completely against it. That's a
I'm
completely
not understanding that either.
Yeah, that's a completely anti-competitive statute in the bill. I'm very, very much so against that. So I mean, Pennsylvania just needs to get its shit together. Just put a logical framework together that you see in other states for your adult use market and just let it be. There's no need to get fancy and have all these quotas and regulations that just don't make sense.
When you look at a lot of these big states, Florida, Pennsylvania, rescheduling in the works, if that were to happen, let's say in the spring that some of you are alluding to, do you see as we head into the election that things will become more and more favorable for these states to flip to adult use sooner rather than later?
I don't think the election has any correlation to states flipping adult use. I mean, it's literally in the hands of the state legislatures and the Supreme Courts of each state. The federal government has absolutely nothing to do with it.
Yeah, but when you see rescheduling and the momentum that it's building, do you think that sways them in any way?
I'm going to take my stance and say no. I think rescheduling obviously is a big step in the right direction for the underlying assets and the operators that we see in the space right now from a 280E perspective.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's going to give any shift in social sentiment. Because I mean, granted, Schedule 3 is still an illegal substance as per the CSA. It's not decrimmed. It's not federally legal. I don't think it has any ramifications or any sort of impact on the states that have not gone adult use yet, or don't even have a medical market opening up just if S3 happens.
Ben, you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree. I don't think I think the state ballots are going to stand on their own. I don't think rescheduling really has anything bearing on what the states are going to do. It's more of a states issue in terms of legalizing in their state. The S3 is more of a taxation issue. And it's a peg on the road to legalization, normalization down the road on a federal basis.
Last time I asked that question then.
Yeah, it was just it was a good question, but I mean, yes, there's, as far as I'm concerned, there's zero, and I could be wrong, but I think there's absolutely zero correlation between the two.
Yeah. All right. This is Into the Wire, headlining all the biggest headlines in cannabis, psychedelics, crypto, and AI. Last headline, let's switch now to the psychedelic space here on the TDR Traded Black podcast, where MindMed reported some telling data related to their phase 2B trial involving the compound LSD. Ben, we got a lot of attention, a lot of feedback on our Twitter account. A few people reached out that we touch on this today. So highlight basically some of the things that people should pay attention to closely based on some of these data information that was shared.
Yeah, there are several. So just a quick background, MindMed was conducting a phase 2 clinical trial on compound MM120, which is a LSD compound for general anxiety disorder. So this is one of their main compounds in their trial, main pipeline candidate. And they finally came out with results, and they were pretty impressive. It met primary endpoint. It showed a statistically significant dose-dependent improvement in HAM-A scores, which is the model, or sorry, the standard for detecting anxiety in the research field. So scores registered a reduction of 21.3 points, which was a 7.6 point improvement over placebo at week 4. So it's worth noting that this is only a short trial, short duration on 4 weeks, but the score reduction there was very significant. Clinical response as well, very awesome to see. 78% in the 100 microgram dose, and 50% clinical remission observed at the 100 microgram dose at week 4. Again, so short trial, but very good results, and it was generally well accepted. No safety concerns as of now. So the next big takeaway is that if MindMed, these results get them into phase 3, and this is, I believe, the 5th psychedelic trial with these companies going into phase 3. So that's how results have been in phase 2.
MindMed, Awaken, Cybin, Maps. What's the 5th one? Compass. Yeah, that's impressive.
Yeah. So, I mean, what it shows overall, just beyond MindMed, in my view, is that the psychedelic sector is starting to come of age. Very slow. We had that huge run 3 years ago, and then it's been a drawdown ever since. But these substances are starting to come of age. We're seeing multiple ones going into phase 3. And in my view, one of these substances or more is going to connect. Somebody has to connect, because these numbers are too good from what we've seen from Cybin, Compass, now MindMed. This research is getting real. And I don't know about everybody else, but I'm starting to get very interested to start taking positions, because, the dust has settled. A lot of phase 3s are happening. It's early in like, we won't know final results for 3-4 years down the road. However, things are looking good right now.
Well, the money that was raised between Compass and Cybin, when we look, I refresh my memory. Do we know off the top of our heads what MindMed's burn rate was based on their latest earnings from last month? Because I think they were around 15 to 20 million per quarter. But where I'm going with this is, when do we eventually see like a big pharma company come in and sponsor one of these phase 3 trials that we've alluded to in the past?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it depends upon the company. It depends what their cash position is, what sort of partnerships they have going in. For example, Cybin, we've talked about it before. I don't personally think that they need a big pharma sponsor to get them through the line, because of the shelf registration, the cash on hand, the ATM, and so forth. I think they have enough resources to get there by themselves. But another company may not be in that position. So I'd have to do a full review of MindMed to sort of make that determination. I don't know if that's the path that they're headed. However, what I can say is the research today was very strong. It was up double digits yesterday, a little bit of pullback today, but now this is back on the radar, because clinical trial success with MindMed had been sort of fleeting and sort of been off my radar for a while, but this gets it back on.
Well, the one that I can't get over still, and we're going to actually have Anthony Tennyson on next week from Awaken, is them. And their stock's been hit so hard in the last month or so, but their phase 3 trial being sponsored by the NHS, I think their costs are a little around $1 million, when normally a phase 3 trial, from what we've heard, can be anywhere from like a couple $100 million. So, if you've got something sponsoring at that kind of cost, I think people want to know, like, why has this stock been hit so hard when they're in a phase 3 trial? But we'll have more details with that next week. All right, that concludes basically our first segment, Into the Wire, highlighting the biggest headlines in cannabis, psychedelics, crypto, and AI. I'm your host, Shad Dales. Happy Friday afternoon with Benjamin A. Smith, Anthony Varrell. 10 days before Christmas. Again, hoodie giveaway going on over at our Instagram account. Log on to @DalesReport to find out all the information as well. Leave us a great comment, DM us on Twitter, and give us a reason why you want to log on next week. Next Friday, December 22nd, we plan to have one of our viewers on the podcast with us. We appreciate everybody for following and watching. And I think it'd be great just to have somebody on and get to meet you guys. Let's segue into our segment number 2, which is our daily movers. And what I want to accomplish here today, things are starting to slow down a little bit. So let's not focus so much on the daily movers today, but maybe a few stocks that we're watching heading into 2024. So because we follow these key verticals like crypto, cannabis, and psychedelics, let's begin with that then, Ben. What are stocks that you're watching heading into 2024 in the psychedelic space?
Well, one stock I'm looking at right now currently is Numinous Wellness. It, of course, could be the beneficiary of MAP's phase 3 trial. With they now, the results that came out, they now applied for a new drug application. So the FDA has 60 days to make a decision whether it's standard review or priority review. So I would expect some movement on that if it's a favorable decision from the FDA. So there are catalysts involved here. But of course, obviously a lot of risk. It has not been, price action has been very poor over the past 3 years. I was wrong on this. I was positive on this a few months ago, and perhaps it was a little early, but I do see, 2024 as a potential inflection point where, yes, there might be some more, they have some challenges on cash on the balance sheet, but there's this, such a robust pipeline of potential catalysts out there, from the NDA, from MAPS, potential approval in sometime in 2024. And also, just if you look at the state level, like, for example, or at the federal level, Joe Biden, with the NDAA, there's a psychedelics research bill that is on his desk that he's about to sign, which would make, open up psychedelic research for, veterans in the military, for example. So all this stuff, and at the state level, we saw Missouri and California legalize psychedelic research when it comes online, when it gets descheduled. So a lot of good catalysts in the space. Of course, do your own due diligence. Don't rely on my information.
Full disclosure, Numinous is a client of ours, and yes, we have a position in that company. So again, all views on the Traded Black podcast and the guests on this podcast are purely opinion. You should not treat any opinions expressed by us or our guests as investment advice, and the views on this podcast are solely intended to be informational and are not investment advice. All right, next up, Mitch, you all right there, brother? Thought you were cutting us off and giving us the yank, but we're back. Let's now focus. Like I said, this week we spoke to Boris Jordan in our podcast earlier this week. Anthony, he said 2024 is the year of growth for both Curleaf and the overall industry, which I have to tend to agree with him. So saying that, we're watching tier 1 and tier 2 MSO, or should say, MSO companies in the space. Who more specifically are you watching and why?
I'm watching a mix of Curleaf, Trulieve, Air Wellness, The Cannabis, and Cresco. I think they're in very attractive markets. I think they had a very good 2023. They've got leverage to Ohio. They've got leverage to New York. They've got leverage to Florida. They are going to be high on my radar for watching them move going into 2024. Also, I might catch some heat from this. Tilray. They traded, I think, 30 million shares yesterday.
Why?
It's because it's a proxy for the U.S. cannabis industry. I'll continue saying that. Canopy as well. Granted, Canopy.
What did Canopy trade yesterday?
Canopy probably traded 27 million shares, I think, but they were also down. And on a dollar-weighted basis, Tilray would have out-traded them 4-1. As Tilray cracked $2 yesterday, Canopy sitting at, I think, 56 and change. Canopy as well. It's one that you need to watch. I think CUSA or Canopy USA is going to be a focal point of the story next year. I think Canopy is going to also be able to be done with the right sizing of their business and get everything on the right track moving forward. But there's a lot to like about the cannabis space going into 2024. I mean, obviously, I was pretty silent on the last section about psychedelics. And it's because if we're talking about allocation of capital, there's only so much to go around. And as much as I like psychedelics, as much as I believe in psychedelics, my capital is probably going to go into cannabis and crypto for 2024 from an allocation perspective, just being honest.
And I know there's a few companies you outlined, but then there's so many more that you could outline as well. Like when
I mean, the growth prospects in cannabis are tremendous.
TerraSend is another one. Like it's
TerraSend as well. I mean, I can go on and probably rifle off 15 different names, and there's a lot to like about all 15 of those names. Cannabis to me is the most attractive trade for probably the next 3 years, and beyond. And I mean, that says a lot. But yes, I mean, you can nitpick, but I mean, also I would be willing to bet that you could throw darts going into 2024, pick 5 different names, and they're all going to go parabolic on Schedule 3 news. It's going to have that high of an impact for the sector.
I found it interesting. I was listening to you guys the other day on the podcast when I was flying to Toronto, and you mentioned how you think small caps going to be a strong year 2024, especially after the Feds announced that interest rates would lower. How much, I don't want to say excitement, but as far as optimism is concerned, Ben, how much optimism do you have in the small cap space overall heading into the new year?
So before Ben, but before Ben goes there, the New York Fed president actually came out and tried to curb the excitement today around Jay Powell saying he was going to cut towards Jay Powell alluding to rate cuts in 2024. He literally came out and said, we're not even thinking about rate cuts right now. So I mean, that was there for a reason.
Misconstrued.
Yeah, it's hard to say what's going on, to answer your question, because on one hand, I don't think the economy is really all that strong. I think a lot of the growth that we're seeing is because it's high inflation. So I don't see the growth rate being too much above the rate of inflation, which if growth was really strong organically, it would be above that. However, I think the Fed with the lower rate environment is going to pump more liquidity into the market, and that should filter into the small caps, especially because they've been absolutely rocked. Until recently, they've been rocked.
Yeah.
I mean, the market's rising on all the big, the Fortune 100 names and technology stocks and AI stocks. Those are the ones carrying the market, and small caps have lagged. So I think it could be their turn, especially if we do get that, higher liquidity, lower interest rates going forward. This is definitely going to help the psychedelic sector if we're at the height of the rate cycle. This definitely helps those high risk assets like psychedelic stocks, especially.
Yeah. Henry Lopez, is that Hector? If it is, always good day to hear from our boy Hector / Henry. He's been following this space as an investor for quite some time. He's always provided some great information in a number of Facebook groups. So always a good time to have him on and watching our podcast.
It's funny to watch the feed today because I'm seeing a lot of names from Twitter that are popping in to the show that usually aren't in here on the 410 segment. So it's interesting to see that happening today.
John Breville writes, we see cannabis grabbing alcohol. When will we see the opposite? I assume you're thinking alcohol companies.
That's not happening.
Meaning that alcohol taking away.
No, he's talking about cannabis companies buying alcohol businesses.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, okay, so yes, I'm wrong, actually. That is happening right now with Tilray purchasing the microbreweries from AB InBev a couple months back. But you're not going to see like GTI by Diageo or like Curleaf by Brown Forman. Those are very, very large, tens of billions of dollars, maybe even over $100 billion in market cap businesses. And then tobacco is a whole nother ballgame that are well over $100 billion in market cap.
Yeah.
And you got to remember, Tilray went, their CEO is Irwin Simon, and he came from Hain Celestial. So he had a very big background in CPG. So they may be different in the route that they're taking as opposed to just, your average cannabis CEO who may not have that CPG background.
You look at that Anheuser-Busch brand and name, it looks pretty like, interesting to say the least that they purchased those assets, but their market share amongst the overall Anheuser portfolio was so minuscule and small.
Tiny.
So are we reading too much into this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so. There's going to be alcohol companies that purchase cannabis businesses. There's
Yeah.
going to be harmony that eventually happens between the two. They're both going to be able to coexist. Like this isn't a tug of war between these two for the consumer.
Yeah.
They're also not combatants of each other.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like cannabis should not be against alcohol. Alcohol is not against cannabis. There's going to be shelf space and there's going to be interest for both to coexist here. Cannabis happens to be a formidable player that is taking active market share away from alcohol. And I mean, I don't see that as a net negative. I just see that as social norms changing within this country, and that's natural. I mean,
Times
things
are
don't stay
changing.
the same forever. Yeah.
As we said, legal market will grow. We're not making gin and tonic out of a bathtub anymore. It's all about branding. And once we see a lot of this legislation open up and brandings to be allowed, then you'll start to really see and get an understanding as to what the roadmap of this industry is.
I mean, absolutely. But I mean, I'll be the first to admit, like, if they allow home grow in Florida, I will start growing plants in my house, but I'm still going to go to True Leaf and I'm still going to go to Sunburn and I'm still going to go to the Flowery, because there's no way that I'm going to be able to grow the quality of flower that I want to consume at home. I might be able to 5 years down the road by trial and error, and I want to do it as a science experiment, but me growing at home is not going to impact me spending as a patient in the medical market right now, or the rec market.
There's actually a dispensary next door here where I'm at, and I want to do the podcast there, and they said no chance. But
yeah, that doesn't surprise me.
Nope. Real quick, there was Lucifer. Great to have you on. Thank you, by the way. He says absolutely love the interview with Boris. By the way, we've got actually behind the scenes footage of them ringing in the bell yesterday at TSX. I got a chance to walk down the street with him leading up to the TSX. Mitch, just to give you a heads up, I did text over to you that video of the actual clip of them ringing in the bell on WhatsApp. So if you get a chance before the end of the show, maybe bring that video up just to show maybe people like Lucifer and a few others, just the crew that was at the TSX yesterday. But before we bring that video up, one final thing is the crypto space. Hearing a lot of rumors that the SEC could approve BlackRock's Bitcoin ETF as early as next month in January. Whether that's true or not, again, this industry, as you said, I'm looking at cannabis, I'm looking at crypto, as you've outlined, Anthony, looks to be heading and steering in the right direction. If so, what are certain tokens and assets that you're watching heading into the new year?
I'm watching Bitcoin and I'm watching Solana. I'm not going to get fancy this time around. I mean, I was trading NFTs, altcoins, like airdrop farming, you name it. I was like DeFi. I was way into crypto. I think that right now it's probably set it and forget it time with like Bitcoin and Solana, and just let them do their thing in 2024. Granted, I might have outsized returns if I try to get fancy again and start going after all these crazy things. But I do think that the new people coming on chain are against Ethereum to a degree, and that they don't want to pay high prices in gas. And Solana is really that chain that's going to attract the new people for this next wave.
Bathtub liquor, random hairs. Ooh, nice comment there, Lucifer.
Yeah.
Got something in your drink there, buddy? Henry Lopez is not Hector. Sorry to cut you off there regarding the crypto space, but that all stems, in the right direction, to say the least. But at the end of the day,
and I do think those ETFs come online Q1.
You do?
Yeah.
Wow, that's big. Coinbase has done so well. Like when you brought up the idea of Coinbase back in mid-October.
It was at $87. It's cracked 150 yesterday.
It's almost doubled.
I'm still holding it, and I'll continue to hold it as they're getting more and more integrated into the crypto space.
Yeah.
They're getting more and more integrated on the institutional side. of the trade, and I mean they're going to be the 800-pound gorilla in the crypto space. If we do get a new wave, and we do get user adoption and people coming on chain, finally, they're going to be one of the major beneficiaries. Because like when you go to trade stocks and you think of Fidelity or you think of Charles Schwab, if you want access to crypto, that's a centralized exchange. That's not a pain in the ass to actually go on and transact with.
Coinbase.
It's Coinbase.
That's interesting.
That is it. It
so
literally is Coinbase.
Even at this price, you still think it's got room to grow?
I think their all-time high is like 320.
Okay.
I might be wrong there, but I'm pretty sure it's low 300s. That was the all-time high. And granted, past performance is no indicator of future success, but I mean, I'm not selling looking at that chart anytime soon. That's moving aggressively to the upside.
Lucifer writes, stock isn't doing the best with regards to Curleaf. I did speak to Boris Jordan yesterday. There's some interesting stuff. Look, he nor a lot of people within management was thinking that the stock was going to rip just listing on the TSX. But we've had conversations with many executives last month in Vegas at MJ Biz. We spoke to the team yesterday. There's actually a lot of firms in New York that actually don't even have certain analysts that are covering the space right now because of how bad these stocks have been hit. However, if there is rescheduling, they're going to come back in a hurry. The challenge is right now with many institutions, and that's where the real money's involved. How do you convince these people when they've heard so many rumors about legislation moving at some point? When you look at a stock that say was $15 a year and a half, 2 years ago, which is now trading at $2. So, I think to the point that Boris has made and many others have made about end of Q1, Q2, that's the kind of announce it's going to make to get a lot of attention with these companies to get back interested in this space again. For those that are following it, again, we kind of feel optimistic about the space, but right now it's not a matter of whether these institutions don't like cannabis. They're not following it right now.
Yeah. I'm surprised by the amount of people that I know, like my friends that I talk to, and I tell them what's going on about cannabis. They're like, oh, I have no idea. Like I literally have no idea. What's going on right now.
Yeah, and I assume, Lucifer, that you knew that wasn't going to rip as well. I just want to share some of the comments. It's always good to have your own thoughts, but when you hear it from people that obviously have a bigger network and are more connected to what I am, rather interesting to hear some of the stuff that they have.
You have to think about it like this with Curleaf and TerraSense moves to the TSX.
Yeah.
So if you're expecting a stock to rip just because they're uplisting, that is completely unrealistic.
Yeah.
But if we get Schedule 3, if we get safer, if we get incremental reform, the plumbing has now been enhanced to those moves, and the access to those names is going to be much easier for people with large money that want to come in versus not. And then those moves will be outsized to the upside on the backs of that.
Lucifer, I can relate. I had a friend this morning who's actually a savvy investor, and he brought up a 1-year chart of a company that I was talking about, and he laughed at me. And I'm not going to say who it was, but I can totally relate to what you're saying. But again, we follow the space inside and out, and we understand, or at least are learning what the future holds over the next 3 to 6 months, quite potentially. John Verville writes, how do we get this to slowly go up instead of hype cycle? It's a really good question, but I do think some of the things that yesterday, it's like, I did speak to a few people, the TMX Group, the TSX, and TerraSense and Curleaf is just a beginning of the times for the amount of companies that they are going to, look at closely and begin listing on their exchanges. But
I think the answer is you can't. It is a hype cycle right now because there's no institutional players right now. So and it's all related to news. So it's going to be it's going to be flat until news comes in, and then it goes up. Or you can have even momentum that we saw recently. MSOs would look like it was on a V line to 8, and then all of a sudden one large fund came in for tax loss selling apparently and shot it all down. So it's going to be more of an illiquid market. And it's just going to run on news until you get a thicker investor base to really, narrow the ranges in which the shares will trade.
Look at that crowd action. It was a good day. Bring that up, Mitch. I got yelled at right here by the TSX Group. Get out of the camera shot. But we set the narrative. Trying to
for
get
the team, all for the team, man. All for the team. Appreciate it, Chad.
Right? Thanks, buddy. All right, that wraps up the second segment, Daily Movers, here on the TDR Traded Black podcast here on the Benzinga Television Network. All right, let's close things out. We're 45 minutes into this, and I'll let you guys go for the rest of the afternoon. I think you want to hit the golf course, Anthony, but wrapping out, quick recap.
We got conference calls here next back to back to back.
So we do.
Anywhere.
We do.
I'm not golfing anywhere today, unfortunately.
Quick recap, cannabis versus alcohol for the next 5 years, and many, including CNBC, think cannabis could win that war, or at least grow compared to alcohol. Pennsylvania looking to expand their cannabis market. MindMed released some promising phase 2B data related to their LSD trials. And based off of that, some of the stocks we're watching in the verticals that we cover in psychedelics, Numinous, and MindMed are stocks we're watching. The tier 1 and tier 2 MSOs, as many to 10 to 15 of them in the cannabis space. And Solana, and what was the other one you had mentioned in crypto,
Bitcoin.
Anthony?
Solana, Bitcoin, Coinbase.
Yeah. All right, gents. Enjoy the rest of your week. Enjoy the weekend. We got one final week before this Christmas break, but I know we've been chugging hard for the last couple of weeks, earnings season, and then all this speculation going on. But one last thing, iBrobro wrote, is December 18th to the 22nd the deadline for the DEA? The answer to that is no. So if you're watching for the first time, don't expect an answer from the DEA about rescheduling before the end of the year, which we've outlined a number of times in our previous podcasts. Have a look at our playlists under Trade to Black. For the last 3 to 4 podcasts, we've outlined that among other information if you want to learn more. But gents, enjoy the rest of your weekend. As usual, if you want to learn more about these spaces, log on to thedalesreport.com and subscribe to our newsletter. Got a lot of interesting information, including stuff behind the scenes with Boris this week in our newsletter. And as well, if you want to become a day trader, log on to Benzinga.com and Benzinga Pro and become a day trader today. Anthony, Ben, enjoy the weekend. I'll check you guys later.
You too.
Hey everyone, thanks for watching. And if you want to learn more about the emerging industries that we cover, then leave a comment below and let us know who you want us to interview, the questions you want asked, and the information that you want to learn. We want to hear from you. As usual, click on that bell for all notifications to get the latest information. Share this video with your network, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel because we